I found myself in a version of the campus that wasn't the same, yet, at the same time, it was. The buildings were distorted, the faces of the people around me were vague, like echoes of something that had once existed. I searched for someone I knew, but no one seemed to recognize me. It was as if the people had different memories from mine. I was a shadow, a strange piece in a puzzle that was falling apart. Every step I took felt like I was sinking further into a distorted reality, where the timeline no longer applied. I realized that every action, no matter how small, had created a branching. A small mistake here, a correction there, and the structure of time began to fragment. The alterations started accumulating and overlapping chaotically, creating a reality that was constantly changing, as if nothing was fixed anymore. Each trip to the past, every attempt to correct a mistake or improve a choice, increased the collapse of reality, making it more and more fragile. I had caused this. I had created an irreversible cycle of temporal distortion. The machine was controlling me now. I was no longer the master of time, as I once thought. I was just a puppet, trapped in the very choices I had made. I tried to return to the laboratory where it all began, hoping that maybe there I could find a way to fix what I had done. But when I arrived, the lab was empty, abandoned. The place seemed to have been overtaken by the dirt and dust of time. There were no signs of life, as if the very space-time had erased everything that no longer fit into the new reality. Desperate, I tried again to use the machine to return to the point where it all started. I wanted to find a way to undo the changes, to return time to its natural course. But when I turned on the machine, I realized it wasn't functioning like before. The screen flickered erratically, and the settings were out of control. What once seemed simple was now a tangle of codes, errors, and failures. I no longer had control over it, and the feeling of being lost in an infinity of alternate realities only grew stronger. Then a horrifying vision hit me. I saw a possible future, or maybe just one of the many branches of time I had created. An apocalyptic future where the world was in ruins. Destroyed buildings, people wandering aimlessly, and darkness covering the sky. I didn't know if it was a future I had created, or if it was just one of the many timelines where reality had completely fallen apart. But, at that moment, I understood, what I had done wasn't just a series of small mistakes. I had triggered something that couldn't be undone. I had torn the fabric of reality beyond repair. I knew I had caused irreversible damage, that nothing could return to normal. The machine, which once seemed like a solution, was now my greatest mistake. And as the vision of the apocalyptic future unfolded before my eyes, I realized there was something worse than the collapse of time. It was the loss of everything I knew, everything that made me who I was. I was trapped in a reality where nothing made sense anymore, and the choices I had made had led to the destruction of everything I loved. I tried again, once more, to correct the mistake, to save what was left. But as I pressed the button, something happened. Time, reality, everything around me distorted. I no longer knew what was real and what was just an illusion created by my obsession with control. And then, everything went dark. The final collapse of time was taking shape. And I, perhaps, was the last trace of what once was. I no longer knew if what I was seeing was real. The darkness consumed my being, as if time had unraveled once and for all. The space around me no longer existed, only fragments of distorted realities, disconnected images of lives that were no longer mine. The machine, which once seemed like an instrument of absolute power, was now nothing but an empty shell, its screen dark and its gears out of place. I was lost, without time, without direction. What was left of me was just an echo in the cracks of what was, what could have been, and the infinite realities that never came to be. But in the midst of the void, something began to emerge. A new timeline formed slowly, like a fragile thread of gold. It was a last chance, a paradox, a final choice that might offer a solution. I didn't know exactly how it happened, but when I looked at the machine again, I realized it was trying to speak to me. Not literally, but in some way, I felt I was being guided to understand what I had to do. Time, though fragmented and broken, was still offering me an opportunity. It was as if everything I had done up to that point was condensing, creating immense pressure, like a final cry from time. The machine was no longer controlling me. It was me who needed to decide. One last trip. One last attempt to fix the irreparable. I knew the odds were minimal, but the desire to restore everything, to make things return to what they were before, was the only thing left inside me. I needed to break free from it all. I activated the machine one last time. The flow of energy surrounded my body, and for the first time, I wasn't being dragged by it. I was in control. And in a flash, I saw everything, what I had caused, the exact moments when my decisions had affected the course of time. I saw the paradoxes unfolding like a web, and I could see that, no matter how much I tried, I could never restore everything exactly as it was. The choices I had made had planted seeds that were now growing, irremediable. But I saw something else, something that gave me a deeper understanding of what was happening. The machine wasn't just a tool to change the past, it was a reflection of the very chaos that time faces when trying to correct its mistakes. And then, as I looked once again at the center of the temporal abyss, I realized the truth. The only way to save what was left of reality was to let time follow its natural course, with all its flaws and uncertainties. I couldn't fix everything. I couldn't erase the mistakes. All that was left was to accept the paradox, to accept that some things simply couldn't be changed. As I turned off the machine for the last time, the reality around me began to stabilize, but I knew that the ramifications still existed. Time continued to unfold, but in a more organic, more natural way. I didn't know what my future would be, nor if there would still be a place for me in the world I once knew. What I did know was that, finally, I had understood the lesson: time is not something that can be controlled. It is something that must be lived, with all its mistakes and successes. I left the machine behind, knowing that, although it had been the source of my obsession, it was also the key to my redemption. Reality, in its purest form, was beautiful because it was unpredictable. And I, now, was just a part of it. As I took the last step out of that laboratory, I didn't know what the future held for me. But one thing was certain: I had learned the most important lesson of all. Time is not to be manipulated. It is to be lived.